Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to be talking about clutch adjustment. So first of all, before we start, check the video description. I have a video on how to install a firewall adjuster in the clutch quadrant, so you need those parts in order to adjust it. And beware, because some of these, like the one I have on my Cobra, actually has a second wheel there, the one that's closest to the firewall. That's like a lock, so you have to turn it left to loosen it up, and then you can make your adjustment. And then you gotta tighten it back up when you're done. If you didn't know that, you might be trying to adjust it and it won't adjust because it's locked first. So just simply put, this is what the firewall adjuster looks, and as you open it up that way, that's the same as if you were to be pushing on the clutch. As you close it to be smaller, that's kind of the same effect as lengthening your cable per se. Now, one of the easiest ways to adjust this is without it on the car yet, the clutch fork. You'll be able to move this forward, back, and forth very easily. Now, when you get under the car, it should take just a little bit of pressure to push this clutch fork forward in order to get the cable to come in. So that's right about where I like to start setting it. And now it is okay to set it a little tighter than usual because it's easier to move it on the car to release pressure rather than try to crank that firewall adjuster for more pressure, because obviously the pressure is already on the cable, so you want to be working for yourself that way rather than against yourself. So this is the throwout bearing that I just changed, and as you can see, it was cracked and had its day. It got so hot and everything, it actually seized to the input shaft retainer sleeve, which is common. So I had to use the clutch fork basically as a slide hammer to pop this off. So you don't want to overheat the bearing, and it can overheat if it has too much pressure turning on the clutch constantly. So the bearing is designed to spin constantly, just not with what you call a lot of preload on it. So there are some other factors involved, and so one of these is going to be your pivot ball stud. So this is the part the clutch fork swings on, and check the video description. I'll show you how that's installed and everything. But as that length may change as it's damaged or wearing down, that can affect it. Also, look at the Cobra's pivot ball stud, how much shorter it is than the regular modular one. The clutch quadrant that you're using has, some of them like this have 3 different hooks, so that can all be a variable. But basically, you want the clutch to engage basically right off of the floor within an inch or two. So you want to start with just a slight amount of air gap, as it's called, where the bearing isn't quite touching, and it's okay for it to slightly be touching and spinning. Otherwise, you get that shock effect where the bearing isn't spinning, and then all of a sudden it has to start spinning. So it's okay to keep it constantly running here. So you close up that so that it's just tight enough to be spinning. But the goal is to be able to have full travel when you push the clutch in, to fully compress those diaphragm fingers on the clutch without doing it too much, because you can over collapse them and do damage to the clutch and the throwout bearing with too much pressure and too much heat buildup on it. Yep. So you want it just at that sweet spot like it is here in this video, where you can tell that clutch is disengaging. Yep. So if 1 inch off of the floor would be right about here, it starts to engage, then you know that it's starting right at the right place. So you don't want the cable too tight so that when you push the clutch in all the way with your foot that it snaps the cable and pushes too hard into the clutch and collapses those diaphragm fingers too much. And then on the other hand, you want to make sure that you are getting that full disengagement. And you'll notice that as you try to shift gears, if it freezes up, then you would know that it's not disengaging fully. It won't go. And the clutch is all the way pushed down. Then that can indicate that you're not collapsing the clutch enough. And so right now mine's engaging towards the top a little too high. And so what I'm going to need to do is turn my firewall adjuster clockwise, which would be the same as basically, quote, lengthening the cable is the effect that it would have. Under the hood, I'm just going to rotate this clockwise. So as I rotate it clockwise, what that's doing is making the firewall adjuster spread much smaller, and so it's taking tension off of the cable. So remember, the more tension that you have, it's as if you're pushing on the clutch. So now you can see as I let the clutch out, it's grabbing closer to the floor. You want it to grab closer to the floor rather than farther away, because what you're doing as it grabs right off the floor, that means that you're not having too much travel pushing those diaphragm fingers closed. So to have it perfect, you want it pretty much close to coming off the floor. About an inch or two is what you want to have. So as you can see here, I'm letting the clutch out slowly. You can hear the RPMs come down, and so that's how you know you have it just about right. So clutch is all the way in, clutch is disengaged, 1 inch off the floor, it starts to grab. So that means once the pedal is fully released, the clutch is all the way disengaged, and that's just about perfect. So just watch this clip so you can see when it's engaging. If you have it too far in and you're letting the clutch and it out just almost all the way before it's engaging, then you have too much pressure on your clutch components, and so you want to get that full travel without snapping the cable from it being too tight as well. So once you feel like it's set pretty well, what you can do to test it is drive the car and with a little bit of pressure on the gas, push the clutch in, and you will notice when the RPMs start to rise. When the RPMs rise, that means that the clutch is engaging properly and it's disengaging the pressure, right? And that's allowing those RPMs to come up, and then as you let it back down, you can feel when it's grabbing and when it's releasing. So as long as you have a nice full release on it all the way, then you know that you're pushing it in enough. So watch the RPMs come up as I push the clutch in, right? So you have a little bit of pressure on it, push the clutch in, they come up, and then let the clutch out, they come back down, and so you know where you have your travel set. Now again, if you try to put it in gear when you push the clutch in and it will not go, you probably are not disengaging that clutch enough, taking enough pressure off of it in order for it to go into gear. Now something else that can happen is if you have the clutch all the way in and you put it in gear and the car continues to roll forward even though the clutch is all the way in, then you know you're not getting that full travel on the pedal, and so it's basically not disengaging the clutch properly. So you would have to tighten that firewall adjuster, and you would want to make that firewall adjuster longer to spread that out to give the effect of putting more pressure on the clutch cable. So again, turning it counterclockwise spreads that out, and it's as if you're pushing on the clutch cable. Now they do offer some of these springs. They don't really make them anymore, but basically this is called a free play elimination mod. It's just an additional spring that you can put on here. And so what that does is helps put the tension on the clutch fork to push it away. So you get a little bit better clutch pedal feel. But as you can see, I still had to basically just barely pry on the pry bar to get this clutch cable on, and that was just about the right length to start. And so as I said in the beginning though, you can have it just a little bit tighter than usual, then it's easier to adjust at the firewall on the car. Because the pressure being too tight, it's easier to release it rather than trying to do the opposite and tighten up that clutch quadrant and basically be compressing those diaphragm fingers by hand. So if that firewall adjuster is just too hard for you to turn, then put the pry bar in, unloop that cable back off of it, and then you can turn it a lot easier to set yourself up, and then it's a lot easier to turn the firewall adjuster that way. One last thing, I do like these standard length cables that are not adjustable. The ones where you have to put all the nuts on the end that's adjustable just seem to walk themselves loose. So I really like it best with an OEM style cable if you can find one that's just single length. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please check the video description. I have other videos that are similar to this that explain it. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. As always, thanks guys, and we'll see you in the next video.